I gotta tell you, Kansas is one of my favorite states to hunt because as a guy that loves to call deer, I can't think of any other state that's any better for calling. They're very reactive. I don't know what it is about Kansas deer, but they're probably the most aggressive breed of whitetails I've ever hunted. These deer in Kansas, they just come to calls. If you can see them and you can read their body language, there is a really good chance you are going to get that buck to come to you eventually.
Yes, yes, baby.
I'm huge about hunting cedars in Kansas. It's all about cover to me, especially calling to deer. It's about cover and how you can control your wind. I try to set up to where if I know I'm gonna be doing a lot of calling, I wanna be set up in a situation where I can kind of keep that deer from getting behind me too much or exposing my wind or a chance for them to pick me off. So as I get to Kansas, we go to this farm. It's a huge block of cedars, a little bit of ag, cow pastures, cows in it. It's thick, and there's a lot of deer crawling through this stuff, and there's a lake in it. Just a really cool property, kind of a unique piece for Kansas in this area to have this much cover. And I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna hang in an observatory position where I also know deer might be coming back and forth and entering this giant piece of property, you know, coming from ag fields across the road or different things like that. I start walking this edge and I'm looking for deer crossings. Instantly, that's what I want to find. And I start finding beds just inside, over this fence, inside these cedars, and I can start seeing where deer are laying down. There's an alfalfa field just a little ways away, about 200 yards, and I was like, well, this is what they're doing. They're going out to that alfalfa, they come back in here, they lay down, chew their cud, they feel safe in here, then they get up the next morning, they may go eat again and then go back to bed for good. But I bet in the mornings I can catch deer coming right back through here. We go back the next morning, get in there, it's a little bit frosty, it's a nice cold morning, and I just feel really good. I'm like, man, there's gonna be some deer moving. And sure enough, as the sun starts to come out and starts melting that frost, a good 35, 40 minutes after daylight, my camera guy Javen's just like, hey, there's a buck behind me right now. He's coming right down the fence line, goes into the thicket. We just let him do his thing. Javen could just see a little better where he was at. He said, there's a big buck in the field.
Split G2 buck is back. Big one. How's he look?
You know, he's got splits, he's got some trash. Just, I mean, an epic Kansas buck. I mean, like, I'm just sitting here going, man, this is my first sit. You know, I might kill a giant this morning. So I was getting jacked. We kind of watched him for a second to see what he was going to do. I wasn't going to just start rattling, going crazy right off the bat. I wanted to feel this deer out, see what he was into, how he was feeling. Could I call him to me? Could I not? What was going to be the deal? So I grunted to him a little bit, he would flick his tail, and as I'm testing him with these grunts, you know, he's just not in a hurry with anything. And I know what it was there had been does walking around in that pasture, and he just keeps kind of smelling around, and he's just undecided of what he wants to do. I don't want to get too aggressive because I feel like if I get too aggressive too fast, I could scare this deer, I could push him off. So I'm just trying to let him make his own mind up. I can tell he's curious, he wants to come, but for some reason he's not wanting to just come on a string. And so I kind of just have to make his mind up for him that, like, look, you know, the action's over here. What you're smelling around out there in that horse pasture or cow pasture isn't what you want. You want to come over here. I kept kind of grunting at him a little bit. I tried some doe bleats. The doe bleats would pique his interest for sure. So then I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to make it seem like there's two bucks over here chasing a doe. Once I did that and I got a little more aggressive, that made his mind up for him.
He's coming. He's coming. He's gonna come right around here. All right.
And you can see it in the video that the needles fall right off these cedar branches. I was really deflated because he was a great buck. And I mean, to have the situation unravel like it did, this really great buck, to not get him was heartbreaking. You know, we looked, there was no blood, there was no nothing. Hindsight 2020, looking back, I figured out what he was probably gonna do. He was just going around that big cedar to another scrape. But we didn't know that at the time, and I rushed the shot, hit that limb, and no buck. The next morning, we just decided that we're gonna go back to that spot where I'd encountered that buck and thought, well, maybe we'll see him again. You know, maybe we'll see that deer with the splits and maybe we'll get another crack. So as we're sitting there in the morning and, you know, the wind's blowing out of the north, it's kind of a cool, stiff breeze, kind of actually getting a little bit cold. And we've seen a lot of does. We've been seeing little bucks moving does through the cedar thickets across the lake and, you know, just all around. There's just a lot of deer movement. We thought, man, any minute we're gonna see a big mature deer. It's just gonna happen. I looked up and I could see a bigger deer. I could just see the body of the deer. I mean, this deer's like 450 yards away. Across the lake, up on the next hill, just sifting through the cedars. But I could tell it was a mature deer just by the way he was walking. And then sure enough, he got to a point and he broke out into the open and he sticks his head up. And I was like, that is an old, mature deer. I mean, like you could just look at him and you could tell he was one of those deer that was a bully. I told Javen, I said, you know what? If I can get that deer over here, I said, I'll shoot that deer. I said, that's a good deer to kill because he's mature, he's older, and he's a bully. So I grabbed the black rack and I mean, I literally just started smashing those things together. Just anything I can to get him to hear it. He hears it. He stops. You can instantly see him turn his head. I do it again. He's looking right in our direction, but I'm trying to hide the rack because I mean, they can see really good. And I'm trying to hide and make the noise at the same time. And that's all it took. And he just starts walking slowly down the hill. And I mean, this is a long distance. He's got to walk around this lake and everything. And I told Javen, I said, that deer's going to be here in like 15 minutes. I said, so get ready.
Right here, right here.
I wasn't even anywhere close to that deer, but being set up in a situation where I could see deer movement, be observant, and take advantage of the calling system. That's how I fill my tags in Kansas almost every year. It truly is. That's how I hunt Kansas. I have different tactics for everywhere. In Kansas, I 120% most of the time rely on calling deer.
Yeah, buddy. Nice big mature Kansas buck. Well, here's this big old boy. Nice big old mature buck to get off the farm here in Kansas. Tickled with this deer. I mean, it's awesome to see how the black rack works. And that's all it took. He was on a string then, come work that scrape, and he come right in. And we just power drived him with a mega meat.
So the keys to this hunt was being in a situation where we could observe a lot of country. We could see a lot of deer movement. If deer were gonna move around in there, we pretty much were gonna see them across that hillside and then use the calling tactics to bring them to us. So setting up our stands in the right spot for the right wind in a corner of this fence row and everything, I felt like kept us in a good situation to keep deer from wanting to get right down below us. There were some existing scrapes there, and whenever you've got deer sign like that and rubs and scrapes, you know the bucks frequent that area. So there's a reason they're there. They're either there looking for does, making sign, or the does are bedding there, or they bed right there somewhat close. So being on fresh sign is key. Reading that sign, putting yourself in those positions, learning how to call at a deer, and then taking advantage of the sightings of that deer and then making them come to you. You know, again, like I say this in every hunt, be a woodsman. Learn to read the land, read the sign, and you're gonna get yourself on deer.